My name is Oliver Davis. I'll be 36 years old this year. Honestly, it's a good age, but I'm still single. I've dated women before, but due to my shyness, I couldn't quite take action, and I'm also busy with work, with no opportunities to meet anyone since I'm constantly going back and forth between home and the office. Perhaps this is just an excuse for being single. I work at the headquarters of a large supermarket in the city, working as a full-time employee in the product department. I grew up in the deep countryside, but I was drawn to the city and came out. I was raised in a corn farming family that has been passed down for generations. Even as a child, I was often asked to help out during harvest time. When I was young, it felt like playing house, and it was fun to imitate my father and mother. But as I entered my rebellious phase as a junior high school student, I began to resent spending my time helping out. There are small convenience stores and candy stores, but they are not within my cycling distance. There are no places to play, and it's impossible for children to go to large commercial facilities. I want to get out of this countryside soon. That's what I thought as I spent my junior and senior high school years. I longed for the city I saw in dramas and became even more attracted to it when I went to New York with my friends for the first time in high school. I didn't tell my parents, but I worked very hard in my studies, thinking that I would go to a university in New York after graduating from high school. When it was time to decide on my future path, I told my parents for the first time that I was going to go out of the state. I'm going to take the entrance exam for a university in New York. If I pass, I'll be leaving home, so please support me. I needed money for tuition and rent in New York. I planned to work part-time there, but I would have to rely on my parents for the initial expenses, so I asked them politely. But my father yelled at me, saying, "A university in New York, you're planning to leave home. You're the eldest son of this house. Don't you have any awareness of being the heir?" I thought he may be a little upset, but deep down, I had a faint hope that he would support me. "I don't approve it. What's this about a university in New York? It's only natural for the son of a farmer to continue the family business." I couldn't help but argue back to my father, who was so dismissive. "Sure, you may have been the eldest son of a farmer and lived that way, but I have my own life. You should let me decide for myself. Don't you realize how hard I've studied?" In the middle of saying that, my father said, "Shut up, I won't approve it. Cool your head," and retreated to his room. I didn't exchange words with my father after that, but my mother listened to my feelings. She wanted me to take over the family business in her heart, but she said, "Oliver has a good head on his shoulders. Go and challenge yourself to make use of it," and she allowed me to take the university entrance exam. I passed the exam in one try. On the day I left for New York, my father went to work early in the morning, and I didn't see his face. "Don't worry about your father. Take care and go." My kind mother said that and saw me off. I had trouble getting used to the crowds and heavy traffic in my first urban life, but I spent fulfilling days living the life I had longed for. I worked part-time to avoid putting too much burden on my parents for living expenses. Of course, I took my college studies seriously. During my studies in that department, I became interested in the retail business, and after graduating from college, I got a job at a large supermarket. I thought I would be assigned to my desired department right after the new employee training, but it turned out that I had to gain on-site experience first because the department I was aiming for was in the headquarters. The site meant working in the store. When I was new, I was made to do everything from serving customers at the cash register, restocking merchandise, and assisting the merchandise manager. In my second year, I was put in charge of the general merchandise department, where I handled creating the sales floor, selling, ordering, etc. After that, I was allowed to experience various departments, such as the food department and the confectionery department, by moving to different stores. 10 years after joining the company, with retirements and generational changes, I was promoted to the product department at the headquarters and realized my desired department transfer. In the product department at the headquarters, I gained experience with buyers. I was assigned as an assistant for various buyers for about 2 months, and then I was officially assigned as the person in charge of the confectionery department. I did everything from meetings with manufacturers, creating layouts for sales floors that changed seasonally, choosing special sale or daily sale products, to setting prices, and supporting stores with staffing, There was a considerable amount of work as I had imagined. I was working as if being chased every day. I was learning while assisting the buyer, and I was able to coordinate well with the buyer, so I think my work was going smoothly. But 6 months ago, there was a personnel change among the buyers, and my direct buyer was replaced. The new buyer was Amelia, who had been in charge of the food department for a long time. I thought she was a strict person when I was dealing with her as a general worker at the headquarters, but as a direct superior, she was very strict and spoke in a rough tone. Amelia, the buyer who had been working in the food department for many years, probably had the toughest job, as it occupies most of the store's selling space, I think. The headquarters has mostly male employees, but she has been working hard as a female buyer, so you need to be quite strong to keep up. I think I'm good with people, though I hate to say it myself. However, she seems to dislike my gentle way of speaking and personality. What was that phone call earlier? Just convey the message and finish it, right? I still have things to do. That's why I hate country folks. Once she found out that I grew up in the countryside, she started calling me a country bumpkin every chance she got. Perhaps she thinks country folks equal slow-witted, as I've never been scolded for my working speed before, but now I am even yelled at with, "Are you still doing that?" The other buyers who were watching encouraged me by saying, "Don't worry about it too much, just do your job, Oliver." There were challenging aspects, but I pushed forward without worrying about them. One day, we had a negotiation with a confectionery manufacturer. I was going to head there with Amelia, the buyer. After some light chit-chat in the negotiation room, the negotiation began. "Oliver, get the documents." It was just as I was told by Amelia, the buyer, and I was taking them out of my bag. That's when I slipped, scattering the documents all over the floor. "Oh, I'm sorry." I hurriedly gathered the materials, but Amelia yelled, "What are you doing?" in her usual shouting tone, even though we were at the manufacturer's office. She didn't help me gather the materials, but apologized to the person in charge, sighing and saying, "Sorry, really, he's a country bumpkin, so he's stupid." "You have met Oliver several times, haven't you? Was he this dull before I was assigned to him?" "It's been more than 10 years since he came out from the countryside, but a countryman who lived deep in the mountains always smells like a potato. After all, it is best for city people to work with other city people, isn't it?" While I was organizing the materials, buyer Amelia was saying that to the person in charge. I made the atmosphere awkward, but that day's negotiation went well, and we returned to the headquarters. However, the next day, we received a message addressed to Amelia from the manufacturer we negotiated with yesterday, saying we want to stop the transaction. Amelia was also in a panic at the unexpected situation. Apparently, the incident during yesterday's negotiation was the problem. I was told that the president of the manufacturer had seen and heard the conversation when I was organizing the documents that had fallen on the floor. Come to think of it, at that time, one of the manufacturer's representatives had left his seat to bring a laptop. The door to the negotiation room was open at that time. That's why Amelia's sarcastic remarks seemed to have leaked outside the room. After that negotiation, the 3 representatives were called to the president's office, and the president was openly angry, saying, "What was that buyer doing? It's outrageous to make fun of a person just because he is from countryside." The reason was that the president's family home was a farm, and he often said, "It's the candy because of the material maker." Also, the president is from the countryside, so it was reasonable for him to be angry. After that, our president apologized, but the manufacturer's president was not listening, saying, "If you want to work with city people in the city, go ahead. We will stop dealing with you." Somehow, we managed to convey our apologies to the fullest extent, and we avoided a complete stop of all transactions. But the transaction was reduced to 1/3 of what it had been before. Since we had been taken care of by that manufacturer for a long time and they had occupied most of the sales floor, it was a significant blow to our company. Amelia, who was held responsible, was running around, bowing her head to other confectionery companies, negotiating to increase the number of transactions, and was chased to fill the gap in the store. I ended up taking on other tasks in place of Amelia, but whether I was sickened by the daily bowing, buyer Amelia lashed out at me, saying, "I had a terrible experience because of you. Be prepared when things are settled." However, our president and other employees blame Amelia, not me. Amelia, who felt humiliated, began to increase my workload in retaliation, and the contents of her sarcasm became quite terrible when no one else was around. I had a stomachache every day. I managed to endure it, but I was suddenly hit by a severe dizziness and sat down in the corridor of the headquarters. My vision kept spinning around, and I was so dizzy that I couldn't stand up and walk. A colleague called an ambulance for me, as I looked pale and felt nauseous. As a result of the examination, it was Meniere's disease. I was hospitalized for 1 day while receiving an IV drip. I was able to get some medication and go home, but the doctor told me that stress was the cause, so I needed to rest properly. Seeing my downcast face, the doctor seemed to sense something, wrote me a note, and kindly urged me, "You can take time off with this. Please rest well." So, I decided to take a month off work. I was experiencing severe dizziness and felt unsteady even when going to the bathroom. I realized that living alone would be tough, so I called my mother for the first time in several months. Then, I was told that my younger brother, Tom, would come to pick me up. I decided to rest at my parents' home. On the way home, in the car, I said, "I'm sorry for making you come get me." This was the first thing that came to my mouth, something I felt I had to say. I had said the same thing when he came to get my luggage. In response, Tom said, "Well, if you can sleep, just sleep. I'll wake you up when we get home." It seemed like he was letting me know that I didn't have to force a conversation. When we arrived at my parents' home in Nebraska, my mother was waiting at the entrance, looking worried. "Welcome home. I've laid out the bed for you. Just rest." She gently stroked my staggering back and accompanied me to the room with Tom. While preparing to lie down in the room, my father came in, looking a bit restless. "Take your time. Don't worry about just a month. Make sure to get well before you go back." Despite his blunt words, I could tell from his expression that he was very concerned. "Sorry, and thank you." My parents nodded, and my mother said, "We'll take care of your brother. I'll go prepare dinner," and they both headed to the living room. Tom helped me change clothes and packed my bags, working silently, while the room filled with a quiet tension. Tom had come to pick me up with just one phone call, but like my father, I hadn't been in touch with him since I moved to New York. My mother called me every few months or so, and we would talk and hear about what was going on. But I had left home against my father's wishes after arguing with him about taking over the family business. I had put Tom in this situation. So, I think that's what I felt guilty. Lying on the bed and looking up at my younger brother, I finally found my voice. "I'm sorry, Tom. It's too late, but I did something terrible to you, and I'm ashamed to be coming back like this." These were the words I had wanted to say so many times, even trying to say them in the car. Then, Tom became slightly amused and chuckled. "Ha ha, what are you talking about? You mean when you left home?" "Sure, I also had pressure to take over from Dad when it came to choosing my path, but thanks to your precedent, I was allowed to go to culinary school. Well, I did end up taking over the farm, but you know I'm running a small pastry cafe as well, right? I'm doing what I love, so I don't think anything of it." That's what he said. With tears in my eyes, I said, "Really?" Then Tom, smiling shyly, said, "Anyway, just rest. I'll bring you something to drink. Just wait." Indulging in my family's kindness, I rested slowly. 3 weeks later, the dizziness had subsided, and I had enough energy to stroll around the house. I used to play in this little creek all the time when I was a kid. Listening to the babbling of the river, I took a deep breath and absorbed nature into my body. The city is nice, but it doesn't compare to nature. I had even started to feel relaxed enough to say that. In my adolescence, I found the countryside boring. But after experiencing life in the city, everything looked fresh, and I realized how wonderful an environment I had grown up in. There were so many realizations. Thinking it was about time to head home, I noticed a woman standing alone on the road. That's unusual. Hiking alone. I was still at a distance from her, but watching her, I noticed she was slightly dragging her foot. "Are you okay? Did you hurt your foot?" I caught up with the woman and called out to her. "Oh, actually, the sole of my shoe came loose," she said, with a distressed expression. It seems she had been walking with her shoe flapping for quite a while, planning to catch a bus to her destination, But with only one bus every 2 hours, she had no choice but to continue walking like that. In doing so, she ended up with a blister. Then the woman showed me a pamphlet and said, I was trying to get to this place called the Forest Cafe, but my feet were already hurting. I wanted to give up and go home, but my phone ran out of charge and I couldn't call anyone. The place she was aiming for was Tom's Cafe. This is my family's place. Shall we go together? Though it was just a blister, she was injured, so I carried her on my back to my family's home. Both my mom and brother were surprised at what had happened, but seemed relieved to hear she was a guest. We took care of her injury and gave her some tea and cookies. Delicious, and thank you for cleaning my wound, and I apologize for the piggyback ride earlier. She was either smiling because of the delicious taste or blushing with embarrassment from the piggyback ride. Her cheeks flushed as she giggled. Honestly, I was the one who felt embarrassed. I hadn't noticed when I first spoke to her, as she was wearing her hat low, but she was quite a beauty, which made me a bit giddy. Both my mom and my brother Tom were happily talking to her. Her name was Mia, and it seems she works in New York, just like me. She goes hiking or visits spas in the countryside a few times a year to refresh. Oh, it's already dusk. It gets dark quickly around here. You're welcome to stay the night if you'd like, Mom offered, and though Mia hesitated, she sensed my mom's genuine concern and decided to stay. After dinner, as I was the last to get out of the bath, I found Mia still watching TV in the living room. Would you like to have a drink together? So we drank together. It had been a while since I drank with someone, and this was the first time with someone as beautiful as her. Maybe I drank too fast, but I got quite drunk. Before I knew it, I was babbling about not having a wife or even a girlfriend at this age, while I was resting at my family's place and complaining about Amelia. Then Mia said, as a thank you for helping me, I'll give you something special when we return to New York. Please look forward to it, she said, with a mischievous expression on her cute face. I must admit that it made my heart skip a beat, but that's between us. The night wore on, and we each went to sleep in our rooms. When I woke up the next morning, it was almost noon. I had slept deeply because of the heavy drinking. Mia had left early in the morning, thanking my parents before returning to New York. That was fun. I couldn't get her out of my mind for a while. Then, 3 days passed, and just as I was feeling down about returning to work, I got a call on my phone from the department manager. When I answered, he seemed flustered. Did you do something while you were off? Anyway, come to work as soon as you can. The department manager hung up after saying only that. Reluctantly, I took the night flight back to New York and arrived at the office around noon the next day, as instructed. I was surprised by the warm welcome, but the reason was that the manufacturer we had reduced our dealings with had contacted us to continue trading as before. However, the condition was that I handle it. My mind, still in rest mode, couldn't catch up. Anyway, the next day, I was to visit the manufacturer. Excuse me. As I opened the door to the meeting room, the woman in the center immediately said, Oliver, hello, I'm the Vice President, Davis. No way. I couldn't help but shout. The woman was Mia, whom I had met at my family's home, and she was apparently the president's daughter of this manufacturer. I hadn't noticed since I had only heard her first name at that time. Usually, she doesn't participate in negotiations, but she would this time. Even the department manager accompanying me was astounded. The negotiation began in a friendly atmosphere. Not only the matter of reviving the cut product, but also the delivery of a large quantity of new products. Remember when I said I'd give you something special? These new sweets are what I've been working on. Mia happily showed me the new products, but it was too soon to be surprised or delighted. They proposed to prioritize delivery of the new product and stock it heavily on the shelves, aiming for a further increase in sales. Our company has become the first to sell it, more than any other store, and that new product was heavily stocked with the launch of the new commercial. If you go to that store, you can buy it. The information spread instantly through customers' social media posts. In fact, popular celebrities appear in commercials for this new product. With limited edition merchandise included with the candy, there was a huge rush of customers to our stores. As a result, confectionery department sales were at an all-time high. I was thanked not only by the product manager but directly by the CEO. After that, it was decided that this achievement should be properly evaluated, and I was promoted to a confectionery buyer. As for Amelia, she was, needless to say, demoted. She was transferred to another department and started working as an assistant. Since then, this was the trigger for building a good relationship with Mia's company as a client. I'm thinking of visiting your family again. Why don't you come with me and show your family how you're doing? I had no reason to refuse her invitation like that, and now Mia and I are going back to my hometown. How did you like it? Subscribing to our channel will motivate us to produce more content. See you in the next video.